All right, here we are at Unforgettable Interviews, sitting down with Craig Valentine. Craig, hey, thanks for being here. If you don't know Craig, he is the 1999 world champion of public speaking and somebody I truly consider a best friend and also a mentor. He's taught me so much about speaking and storytelling and the business side of speaking. So Craig Valentine, welcome to Unforgettable Interviews.
Oh, thank you. 1999 sounds like such a long time ago. It's like the last millennium. I closed out the millennium. How about that?
You did. Boom.
But as you know, what got you here won't get you there. So we're always striving and grinding and trying to get to the next level.
Amen.
Thanks for having me.
That's unforgettable about you, Craig, is after you won the world championship, the first thing you did is you went to the store and you bought a book on how to be a better speaker.
On the art of public speaking. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've been buying books about it ever since, you know, and then what I couldn't find, I actually went out and created. So for example, I couldn't find much on back of the room sales. And I took everything I could from influence books like Cialdini and Joseph Sugarman and all these books. And I created it based on trial and error, based on experience. But I think continuing to learn, even when you have hit a certain level, is extremely important.
Well, it's what makes you different and what makes you excel. You had a great foundation, and then you just keep growing. And I don't know about you, but one of my favorite compliments is when people say, I saw you 2 years ago and you were good, but now you're so much better.
Yeah, I always take that two ways. People say that. Like I was in South Africa, and one guy said, "You've gotten a whole lot better." I was like, "Well, how bad was I to start with?" Right? So I always take it two ways, but yeah, I should probably take it the way you do.
Well, you can't look at it both ways. It is both ways, but let's focus on the fact that you're getting better. So it doesn't matter where we were yesterday.
That's
so
right.
Craig, I wanted to interview you because in my mind, you are not only a master storyteller, but you're a master teacher of storytelling. And that's rare. And I know storytelling is an important element in speaking, but in anything in general, what would you say is most important to not only creating, but delivering an unforgettable presentation?
I think it's very simple when you think about it. It's like, what can you not shake from your brain? What is unforgettable to you that happened in your life that's unforgettable to you? If you're not sharing that, we've got a problem. And I see speakers like, well, I got to come up with this sensational stuff. No, you don't. You have to uncover something that was unforgettable to you. And I'll give you an example. And you may have heard this, but a lot of people probably haven't. One of the most impactful situations that ever happened to me was I was on a flight from Los Angeles to Baltimore. It was a 5-hour flight. And I sat down on the flight and the guy sat down next to me. And I remember thinking, wow, this guy looks kind of like me, just a slightly older version. I wonder what he does in life. Now, Darren, you fly a lot and you're going to fly today. When you fly a lot, the first 4.5 hours of the flight, we say absolutely nothing to each other.
Right. Especially the introverts.
Yeah, exactly. And the last half hour of the flight, he turns to me and he says, "How you doing?" Like, "I'm fine. You know, I've actually been here the whole time." He said, "I'm sorry I didn't talk to you earlier, but I didn't want to talk to you and then find out you were boring and then be stuck talking to a boring person for 5 hours." And I was like, oddly, I understood because I'm kind of the same way. Well, now, Darren, when you're on a lot of flights, how do people try to start conversations with you? What are some of the things they say?
What do you do for a living?
Yeah, what do you do? Well,
where are you going? Is this, you going home or are you going away?
Yeah, and the where you going question always trips me out. I'm like, hopefully we're going to the same place. Just like drop me off over Vegas. He didn't say any of that. He just, it felt like he was looking through me. And he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, right now I'm an events planner. Eventually I'd like to be a professional speaker." I said, "Why? What do you do?" He said, "I'm a professional speaker." I said, "You are?" He says, "Yes, as a matter of fact, I am the #1 gospel comedian in the United States of America." I said, "Man, I didn't even know there was such thing as a gospel comedian." He said, "That's why I'm #1. Right? Now, when I tell that story, when I first started telling that story, I actually continued with it. Because the most impactful part, the part that actually changed my life, happened after that. And it's when we were about to land. And you got to understand, this guy, he's a speaker, but he was also very dramatic. And so right when we were about to land, he said to me, "You have a lot of obstacles in the way of you becoming a speaker, don't you?" I said, yeah, I think I do. He said, "Well, let me tell you something. There's somebody waiting on the other side of your hurdle for their race to begin."
Mm.
And it hit me like that.
Wow.
Like it hit me. It's never left me. It's been unforgettable to me. So I started to go out and I started to give that speech. And you know what people would say to me afterwards? "Oh, I love that speech that you just gave, that story you just gave about the niche and finding your niche." And I said, "Finding your niche? What about the hurdle and the race and the no, we don't care about that. Find your niche. If you're number one, if you're the only one, you're number one." And so they didn't take what I took from it. So from testing and tweaking, I realized that even though one part of the story was unforgettable to me, another part was unforgettable to my audience. And so I started just really focusing on the unforgettable part to them, which was, that's why I'm number one. And that means you're number one when you're the only one. Somebody once said, "Find your niche and scratch it." You know, somebody else said, "Your niche will make you." So they were taking something different from the story. And that's the point. When there's something unforgettable to you, go out and speak on it, and then test it and tweak it until it becomes unforgettable to them, even if it's not what was unforgettable to you.
And what I'm taking from this too is that I don't know if you agree or not, but when it's unforgettable to you, you have a better delivery. You're more present. You're more passionate. So that helps your delivery, which makes the story more unforgettable.
Because you don't have to try. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to act. You don't have to. All you have to do is remember. All I have to do is go back on that plane and sit in that seat. I can still remember the guy, you know, I'm struggling with my luggage and this and that. I can still remember the guy. The very last time I saw him was people were coming in as soon as we landed, took his bags, and then he jumps in a limo and he's gone. I'm like, what, did that just happen? Even to this day, and it's not to be cocky or anything like that, when I land at the airport, I have a limo come bring me home, because first of all, it's feasible financially, but second of all, it reminds me of that day.
Wow.
And so it's kind of become full circle.
That's cool. You're staying connected to that moment. And wow.
Yeah. And Darren, you got to understand something about me also. When it comes to being unforgettable, I think you have to do ABC. Always be creative. Always be creating new stories, new content, new material, and you'll be unforgettable. My problem is not necessarily a problem, but I think corny. It's just who I am. I think corny. And sometimes that can lead me into trouble. So one thing that happened when I was coming to see you a couple of trips ago to Vegas, nobody but one audience knows this story. I was sitting on a plane, and before we took off, I said, "Oh, I got to get something out of my bag." So I reached into the top bin to get something out of my bag, and my keys fell out of the bag and literally landed on the lady, her head right in front of me.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, we're going to Vegas, so everybody's happy. So she turns around and she has this big smile and she's like, "Really? Keys? You're going to have your keys fall on my head? Why would you have your keys fall on my head?" And Darren, my first corny thought was, well, I was trying to open your mind. And it's corny, but it's me. Right. And so I didn't feel like I could tell that story because of it being corny. But I actually went out to London, and in a one-day workshop I was given, I shared the story, and they loved it. And they laughed. And when you get a laugh in London, that's good. I love my audience out there. But I shared it, and they laughed, and I thought, you know what? It has potential. And here's the real key about this story. It's really a story about a thought. Right? If you think it, you can turn it into a story. I didn't say this to her. I just thought it. And whatever you think can become something that becomes a story if it made you think, act, laugh, or learn.
And I'm just thinking, she didn't want your keys to success.
Oh, see, you're just as corny as me, so I love it.
Yes, I am. Guilty.
But ABC, always be creating and always look at what you can't shake from your own mind David Brooks gave me some great advice. It wasn't really for me, it was for other people, because I had already won the world championship. But he said that when people come to me, this is him talking. He said, when people come to me and ask me what I should talk about in the world championship, he said, I tell them, give the speech that's in you to give. Simple as that. Give the speech that's in you to give. Instead of trying to impress judges or impress audience or do this, give the speech that's in you to give, and you will be unforgettable.
Wow. And I love the idea of ABC, and I think it's because of that idea that, you know, we do Lady and the Champs every year, and what it does for me is it forces me to create new material, because we have a lot of the same people come back every year.
Exactly.
And one of that chunk or something from that new speech becomes a part of my regular presentation. So
yeah, and that's good. And when we do boot camps and things like that, people who come get to test out their new material. And that's very important, because you can't have a shelf speech. What I mean by that is you have a speech that you just sit on a shelf and you think you're going to take it off the shelf and use it a year later or use it a year later. And let me tell you something. If your speech is not getting better, it's getting worse. There is no neutral. So you're either constantly working on it and improving it and creating, or it's getting worse.
And Craig, what do you think this is great content for becoming unforgettable? What else do you think is part of the mindset that is necessary to be unforgettable?
Well, for me, it's always about making my audience tall. Think, act, laugh, and learn. And so when I think about the things that have happened to me, I'm thinking, okay, is this going to make them think? Is this going to make them act? Is this going to make them laugh? Is it going to make them learn? And so think about what it's done for you. Like I can remember when I first joined Toastmasters, I had a mentor, and I went to him and I said, listen, we're supposed to be giving these 5 to 7 minute speeches, but it always takes me like 8 to 10 minutes to give my speech. I don't know what to do. What should I do? And my mentor looked at me and he said, talk faster.
No.
Like the worst possible advice you can get.
Oh, ouch.
So if you look at the first 2 years of my career, I'm speaking 100 miles per hour. And that's because of that advice. So when I look at that, you look at cautionary tales, things that happen to you that you don't want to happen to other people. And you share those stories.
Yeah, we got to be careful who we listen to.
You got to be very careful who you listen to. And then you also always look for the foundational phrase, because that's what's going to stick with people. This is the phrase that's fewer than 10 words, that is you focused, that is somewhat rhythmic, so and that you can share with your audience. So some examples of my foundational phrases, and one of my stories, the foundational phrase is don't get ready, stay ready. And another one of my stories, the foundational phrase is your dream is not for sale. And another one of my stories, the foundational phrase is what got me here won't get me there. Or what got you here won't get you there. So you always want to have these foundational phrases attached to a story that's fewer than 10 words that your audience can remember and repeat. I can remember being in India after a conference, and I was in Mysore, India, and I woke up the next morning and there was a newspaper slid under my door. And I picked it up and there was a big picture of me on the front cover. And the headline read, your dream is definitely not for sale. And that's when I knew, okay, it stuck. It stuck and became unforgettable.
Well, that brings me to a question. And by the way, Ian, welcome. And I can't see all the viewers, but whoever else is on the top left, if you've got a question for Craig, there's a button that says Q&A. So just tap on that or the chat and type in a message, and I'll ask Craig for you. But we only got a few minutes here, so it's got to be in the next 10 minutes if you've got a question for Craig. So Craig, here's a question for that. And you think in foundational phrases. And,
I do.
And it kills me, and I love it. And I think that's part of your brilliance and what makes you unforgettable. But for somebody who doesn't have that habit, what guidance would you say if someone says, wow, I need a foundational phrase? What guidance would you give them?
I'll say don't even start necessarily with the foundational phrase. Just start with what is the exact main point you want them to take. What is the exact main point you want them to walk away with? And when you start with that, you can really start building your story around it. And then as you start to give your story to your audience with this point, they'll come up and tell you what they got from it. And when they come up afterwards and tell you what they got from it, then you can start to really turn it into a foundational phrase. It's like the story I tell about the drive-through. You know, Darren, have you ever gone to a drive-through restaurant, placed your order, and been misunderstood?
Yes.
All right. Now, again, especially online here for legal purposes, I can't mention the name of this restaurant, but its initials are KF and C. Now, imagine being in my passenger seat when this actually happened to me. I'm driving through the KFC. I get to the intercom. The lady says, "Welcome to KFC. How may I help you?" I said, "Yes, I would like 3 thighs." She said, "Small or large?" And I didn't understand. So unfortunately, I blurted out, "Do you have large thighs?" Now,
it never gets old. Every time I hear that, it never gets old. I love it.
I'm going to recommend that you never ask anyone this question. And she came back and says, "Yes, we have small and large sides. How may I help you?" But by now, I was just like rolling over in embarrassment. And I called a friend of mine that night, and I told him what happened. He said, "Craig, what you say is not always what they hear."
Mm.
So see what happened? I mean, he wasn't even an audience of mine. He was just a friend. And now he gave me this foundational phrase I can use. And Darren, there have been times, if you remember, where you and I have had misunderstandings. And you said to me, I had a KFC drive-through moment. You actually brought that up to me. So it's memorable. And it can guide you in certain moments of distress or decision-making moments or forks in the road of your life.
And I think that's important. Like, if we really want to impact our audiences and we care about our message and we care about them, we've got to make it unforgettable. Otherwise, it was just about you and the time you're up there and the applause. Which
you have to make it so that when they get to a fork in the road, they might make a different decision than they have in the past. And then they'll get different results than they did in the past. I remember people, I've had a lot of people contact me over the years and say, I was ready to stay in this position that I wasn't liking. And then I remembered what you said, that my dream is not for sale.
Mm.
And I left. So I'm really responsible for a lot of people being unemployed. But at least they're going after their dreams and they're happier.
Yes. I think I passed a couple of them on the road here. Looking for money.
But I always look at what makes you tall, what makes you think, act, laugh, and learn. Something that made me laugh. And again, with my mind, I'm corny, so obviously my kids are going to be the same way. And I remember we were in Los Angeles maybe 3 years ago when my son was, 2 years ago when my son was 9. And we had to leave the next morning really early. And so my wife said, "Okay, it's 9 o'clock. Let's all go to bed." I said, "No, I can't go to bed. I can't make myself go to sleep." She said, "Well, we have to go to sleep so we can wake up really early next morning and get our flight." I said, "Honey, I can't sleep on demand." And my son Ace said, "Well, then sleep on the bed." Right? 9 years old, as corny as me. But it made me laugh, so I can't forget it, so I got to share it.
Yeah. If
you don't share what made you laugh or think or act or learn, it's going to be bubbling up inside of you and make you frustrated. Share it. Awesome. And then you can test and tweak it.
Any final tips on being unforgettable?
Well, you want to tell your story. You want to make your point. You want to have a foundational phrase that's fewer than 10 words. You want to make people tall, think, act, laugh, and learn. My best advice for making your stories and yourself and your speeches unforgettable is this. Go to that part of your life you didn't want to go to. Go to that part of your life that you didn't want to go to. That part of your life that you might have been hiding from other people, maybe even hiding from yourself. Go to that part, because that's where the emotion is. That's where some of the pain is. That's where some of the pain can turn into the promise. That's where your gold is. And I learned this from Patricia Fripp, because she took me to a year in my life that I just wanted to forget. And from that, I was able to reframe what happened in that year. And Darren, you mentioned to me before we got on the conference today that my closing story, the first time you heard it, gave you chills.
Absolutely.
Well, that's because I went to that part of my life I didn't want to go to, and that's how I normally close many of my keynote speeches today.
That's where the best stories are hiding.
That's where they are. And if you're hiding from yourself, you'll never find your best story. Yeah.
It's your ego gets in the way.
Yeah.
And the irony is, if you share those stories, you're going to make more of an impact. You get more applause. People rehire you more, which would actually fill the ego.
If you can go to that part of your life that you didn't want to go to, you can turn your pain into their promise. And that's what you want to do. You want to turn your pain into their promise. And when you do that, you're going to be unforgettable. And by the way, Darren, that's what we're going to work on at Lady and the Champs. At Lady and the Champs, I'm going to take you behind the scenes.
I was just going to ask you.
Oh, there we go.
I was going to ask you. So for anyone watching, if you want to learn more, join me, Craig Valentine, Ed Tate, Mark Brown, a host of experts, and of course, Patricia Fripp. Just go to ladyandthechamps.com. So Craig, what are you going to talk about at Lady and the Champs?
We're going behind the classics. We're going behind my best stories, the classic stories. You know, if I see Les Brown speak, I want to know what's behind that radio story that you give, because that's taking your career to another level. If I was to watch, when I used to watch Keith Harrell, the late Keith Harrell, I would want to know what's behind the stuttering story. I want to know what's behind your best material. How do you take me behind the curtain? Show me how it started. Show me how I can take those tools and use them for myself to make my stories unforgettable. And that's what we're going to do at Lady and the Champs. We're going to go behind the curtains, show you all the secrets behind the classics, and then you'll be able to take those tools and make your stories unforgettable and make your speeches unforgettable, make you unforgettable. And like I always say, when you get the buzz, you get the biz, right? So if you can make yourself unforgettable and get that buzz, you're going to get more business. And that's what it's all about at Lady and the Champs this year. So going behind Craig's classics, so to speak.
That's perfect. So Craig, if I can recap here, go to unforgettable moments of your life and create a story out of that. Find the story, find the message. Create a foundational phrase to make your message stick, that we remember it 3 days later. Speak tall. Think, act, laugh, and learn. And go, again, as Patricia Fripp asked you, go to that part of your life that you don't want to go to. And
test it and tweak it. Test it and tweak it, because what happens, what you might have thought was the unforgettable part might not be unforgettable to them. They might be stuck on a different part.
Yeah.
And again, what you say is not always what they hear.
And you'll be so into the story and trying, if your intention is right and for the audience, that we don't know what other messages they're going to take, but you'll deliver it better because it's important to you. And by the way, Craig, Ian just typed in, he said, Craig, I love your book, World Class Speaking in Action. Seems to be all your material. However, you have 20 co-authors. How did they get away with teaching your material? Sorry.
First of all, we have 50 co-authors. Wow. There are 50 chapters written by 50 certified world-class speaking coaches, and anybody who becomes certified as a world-class speaking coach is able to use all of my material to not only coach, but also to speak and even to write books. I know Will Reed wrote World-Class Speaking Japan after he became certified, and he went to #1 out there. So that's the way that they had permission. And one last thing, go ahead, Darren.
I was just going to say, and the title of the book that you did was World Class Speaking, correct?
Correct. And I also did World Class Speaking in Action. I did the first chapter in that. But I was just so excited because 50 co-authors who are certified world class speaking coaches can now call themselves Amazon.com #1 bestsellers. And that's what I was excited about.
That's cool. And then
last thing on stage, Darren. Last thing on stage is you talk a lot about intention, and I know you have the card that you look at before you take the stage, and I think that's also important to become unforgettable. And what I tell myself is, before I get on stage, I say, may I forget myself, remember my speech, and touch my audience. May I forget myself, remember my speech, and touch my audience. Now, don't get that mixed up. But if you say that, you're going to have the right intention moving.
Such a beautiful moment, and then boom, humor, funny.
It's the way I think. I'm sorry.
That's awesome. Craig, you are an unforgettable teacher. If you want to join Craig and me and the rest of the gang for Lady and the Champs live in Las Vegas, or live stream it from your home, it's March 3rd and 4th. The deadline coming up before the price goes up is actually tomorrow. So check it out tonight if you want to save some more money. But we want to make you unforgettable on stage so you can help your audience and serve them. As Craig said, Craig Valentine, you are a classic, one of the greatest teachers, I think, who lives or ever lived.
Thank you.
Teaching public speaking and storytelling. Craig Valentine, you're amazing, and you are an unforgettable friend.
Thank you.
All right.
Likewise. I can't wait to see you in Vegas, Darren. I can't wait to see everybody who shows up.
All right. Take care, buddy.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. See you.
See you later.